We are at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. House Bill 93. We have amendments.
House Bill 93, sponsored by Water, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, an act relating to water development projects, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Strzok.
Mr. Chairman, I move on third reading, amendment number 1 to House Bill 93 and this is where I explain it, right? Oh.
Please proceed, Representative Strzok.
I would like to remove the cloud seeding.
Just so I understand, are you withdrawing amendment number 1?
Yes, no, I am not withdrawing it, but that my amendment is to take away the cloud seeding.
Okay.
So I've done a little research here, and it is $825,000 that we put into it. We've been doing this for at least for 10 years that on the research, and there is no significant change in our in any of our moisture. And I just feel it would be better, well, just with the money that we could save and use, and there's no reason to be putting our money to this cloud seeding that is really showing no signs of getting more moisture.
Speaker Summers, for your first time.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, thank you. On and against the amendment. A lot of the cloud seeding occurs in my valley, the Green River Valley, which is part of the Colorado River, and there's been a decline in moisture across the basin, and who's to say we haven't buoyed a little bit of that? If cloud seeding didn't work, all of the resorts in the area, the good ski areas around the Great Salt Lake, if it wasn't for cloud seeding, if cloud seeding didn't work, if there wasn't a belief in cloud seeding that it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it. They all do it, and the reason is because it works. And it maybe doesn't provide a ton of moisture, but when you have a moisture-bearing storm, it provides more moisture out of that moisture-bearing storm. And I think any additions that we can get in that valley and that system right now are imperative with the drought we face across the West. So on and against the amendment.
Representative Conrad, for your first time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would like to address a few items specifically based on facts. As I pointed out earlier when we talked about this, I want to be clear, and as a denotion, this is our 6th year in cloud seeding. Specifically, when we look at cloud seeding, we talked about a number of aspects, specifically ground-based and also aerial-based. To give you some perspective, and these are facts, the value of cloud seeding has been demonstrably positive. Specifically, as we look at the results, we're averaging between 12,000 and 49,000 acre feet annually based on our cloud seeding efforts. Now, if you take an average, that's about 30,000. To give you some perspective of what an acre foot is approximately 326,000 gallons. Cloud seeding is very, very effective. It's not an exact science, as I testified earlier, but it's not voodoo. We are in an infancy as it relates to this technology. It is proving beneficial, as pointed out earlier by our speaker. The Colorado River Compact is going to impact all of us at one point or another. It's already impacting the southwest corner specifically as it relates to loss of water for agricultural needs, but also for industrial needs. It's critically important that we do everything in our power possibly as we look at this emerging science and technology to promote this cloud seeding. I think one misnomer as we look at cloud seeding, let's just put this in perspective. This costs about $11 to $22 per acre foot. Again, that's 326,000 gallons of water. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, This is our 6th year. I also want to point out a number of other aspects that I think are critically important as we look at this. As I mentioned, as a disclaimer, this cloud seeding is not a 1-for-1. It's not for every 1 gallon that we inject, we get 10 inches of snow. But it is a science that we're trying to understand, and we have to do everything possible to ensure the livelihood of our counties and the state, specifically as it relates to the ever declining nature of our water. Our good speaker talked earlier about the Great Salt Lake. Just as some perspective, if you haven't seen Glen Canyon Dam and or Lake Mead, you've seen the significant impacts of loss of water. We understand that the Colorado River Compact, which was done in 1922, only allows the state of Wyoming about 7.5 million acre feet. Our inability to provide that is obviously impacting Glenn's Ferry in terms of not allowing enough water. It's going to become to the point here, folks, where we actually are going to be losing our water. As we talked earlier, it's the Constitution, it is our water, and we need to do everything we can to promote that. In conclusion, as I mentioned earlier, the Great Salt Lake has lost 73% of its capacity. It's all around us. Additionally, and to conclude, there are 10 remote controlled ground generators based in western and southern aspects of the Wind River. This targeted cloud seeding is extremely specific as we looked at first the Wind Rivers, but also the Medicine Bow and Sierra Madre weather. It is proving beneficial. And the access to silver iodide, which is the critical component in this, is fruitful. And if we don't take advantage of this, we'll all be at a loss. And then finally, in conclusion, recognize that some 30% is what we're asking for total funding of this cloud seeding. The remaining 60% is provided by respective industries, businesses, et cetera. So this is only a small fraction, specifically, or more importantly, a third of all the costs that are necessary to support this measure. There's many, many businesses that continue to support this and will continue to support this. As a personal matter, I have to stand in front of my management team to ask for money or funding to promote our involvement in this water seeding. We believe in it. If we're gaining anything, we're gaining something. But to do nothing is to, more importantly, seal our fate as it relates to water. I stand for any questions.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Mr. Chair, I'm not really in favor of cloud seeding, but as the good representative there from the drier country points out, it does work here in Wyoming. And the big reason what does work there in Wyoming is we've got reservoirs to store the water. That's the key to this whole thing, is if we capture these events in the spring when the runoff is there, we're able to store that water for releases later during the year.
Chairman Eklund for your first time.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, the first explanation was really good. I think an emphasis on this is how much is funded by other people besides the state of Wyoming. The city of Cheyenne puts money towards it. They believe it helps their situation. The downstream users of the Colorado River Basin pay for their share of it. The state to the south of us pays for the upper part, and they believe in the research. And if anybody wants me to describe how the 9 years of research went, I could tell you why scientifically we found out. The state of Wyoming proved that cloud seeding in reality works. It works in a lab, but hadn't been proven. We've got a couple ranges of mountains that helped us prove that, and I'll be around for a second reading if I see that there's a need to discuss how the project was done and how the science was established.
Anyone else for their first time? Representative Baer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the good representative bringing the amendment, and I just have some questions more for the bringers of the bill. So if the representative from District 19 or the good chairman could explain a couple of things to me. I think it was mentioned that other states are involved, and also some of the other funders of the program sounds like political subdivisions. So it sounds like there's a lot of public dollars being used for this. I will take the good chairman up on his offer of sharing about the 9-year investigation and what that outcome was, I do want to hear about that. But my question right now simply is, how much of this is going downstream? What is our percentage? I understand the 30% potentially is what we're paying of it. How much of that total water volume that's being created are we getting? Is it 30%? Is it a different number? And how reliable is the data? And maybe that's too much for us to talk about here, but I'd sure like to know. It just seems like a very wishful program to me. Thank you. On and for the amendment.
Anyone else for their first time? For the second time, Representative Conrad.
I'd like to thank the previous speaker for his questions, which are very, very valid. And I will provide to you and this body the respective reports that I receive weekly as it relates to this. I will share with you, beginning in 2014, that study, and this is obviously 8 years or so ago, it was directly attributed that 5 to 15% of increased efficiency based on our amount of snow was directly attributed to cloud seeding. And I do want to clarify, just for educational purposes, if I may, that cloud seeding doesn't really create snow. Okay, what cloud seeding does, it's a catalyst that actually allows the moisture that's already in the atmosphere, clouds, et cetera, to cause that snow to fall and to fall out. So it's not a one-to-one, as I mentioned earlier. It's just this impactful that creates a heavier gravity that allows the snow to contribute, et cetera. But in respect to the previous speaker, I will provide that data and that research for all of us, which I believe will share, will more importantly show factually the benefits of this program. Again, it's not one-to-one, but it is producing producible, more importantly, producing moisture that is, more importantly, staying in the state of Wyoming that allows us to fulfill our obligations to the Colorado River Compact. Thank you.
Chairman Eklund, for your second time.
So, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, in a lab, you can demonstrate that cloud seeding does work, but nobody had proven it in nature. We found that the cloud seeding works best where you've got the highest mountains. The more altitude, the more apt the success will be in producing moisture by seeding. Wyoming has a couple of ranges, the Snowy Range and the Sierra Madres. If you kind of look at them on a map, they lie perfect. They're kind of parallel and they're in the same direction as the storms are. So for years before, our cloud seeding modification research would seed one side or the other side and see what on a storm that hit both ranges, and then you'd collect the data. You can only seed the cloud when there's a weather event, so a storm has to go through. The thing that kind of throws a monkey wrench into it, they've used very conservative figures on which events they would keep, which data they would keep. If there was any contamination at all by the silver iodide on the other range that they weren't trying to seed, because it could happen. It could float off in the clouds. You'd seed this part and the other part would catch a little of it. They threw the data out, even though there wasn't a significant amount of silver iodide. So some of the scientists were looking at that data and said, well, it's probably a lot higher amount than what we've estimated. And before we ever finished the research project, we had other states using airplanes to seed clouds for recreation as well as their own snow packs. So they believed that the research was going as planned, and we continue to get evidence that supports that the research was valid. And I think that probably describes it as briefly as I can. Why we did. Wyoming proved that cloud seeding does work, and it is the other piece to this that we're working on that hasn't been mentioned is we're working on reservoirs too, so we'll have the storage to collect and keep the water It isn't just cloud seeding. We had to suspend the cloud seeding in the Laramie Range, and the best part of it was quite a ways north of here because the La Perelle Dam can't be filled. It can only be kept about half full. So that part of it's been suspended and will be till we rebuild that dam. But we have other dams that we're working on. It takes years and years to do it, but that would be the other piece to the cloud seeding that I think is very important, why we need to continue the program.
Representative Davis for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem, or Speaker Pro Tem. As the good representative pointed out, simple water math is if you're at the top of the basin and you can catch and create that snow, then you are the first in line for the chance to irrigate with that. And where we've got storage up here, we get a couple of shots at it before it leaves the state. Once it leaves the state, we don't have any more shots at it.
Representative Bear for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Still have serious questions about this particular program. This is going to sound kind of strange, but I'm curious about the silver iodide and what kind of health concerns it might have. It sounds like you can actually end up on a different mountain range than what you intended and find traces of it. So I'm curious if there's ever been a study as to what kind of health effects that might create. And in addition to that, as I look at the bill itself, I'm still on the amendment, but as I look at the bill, there are several projects that we know would affect the water that we have here in the state. We know 100% that it would, and we're not moving those forward, but we're continuing to spend, I think the bringer of the amendment said $800,000 on this program. Just curious if we're really putting our money in the right place. Thank you on and for the amendment and probably for the bill.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Representative. So just something I want to point out, if this does work so well, there's one thing. For one, we've been in a drought for a long time now, 7-10 years? And the always question is, why is Lake Mead drying up if this is such a successful project?
Members, we are on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 93. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 93 has failed. Division having been called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 93, please stand. So, we'll take. All of those opposed to third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 93, please stand. More than 16. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 93 has failed. Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 93 and ask for the body's favorable consideration. Members, really, there's a lot of renumbering on this amendment, but if you just go to lines 9 and 10 of your amendment, page 49, lines 14 through 16, it says delete entirely and then renumber. And really, that's that 30 million that we put in the bill the other day for water free. I'd propose we just leave it in the general fund, and then when we leave here, that general fund will sweep to the LSRA and go into our savings. So instead of staying in an account where it's not going to earn any interest, we can get it working for us. And I would just say this, we've never had a Water 1 or Water 2 project that the state has not funded. We just haven't. And when I was chair of appropriations, I led the charge to help Gillette run the Madison Water Project, 144 million of state dollars. And so we've done some incredible work. And Water One and Water Two continue, they're in the funding stream of severance tax, 23 million a year or so, comes year after year after year. So the question is, what's this Water Three account for? These are for big projects, but I don't know what's on the list. Does anybody know what's the first one on the list? I don't know one, so maybe the good chairman of Water can ask. And so that's part of that thing. But I think the long-range plan and how we put our money in the right spot to earn the most of it, there's a lot of ways to save money that we can make money. And don't get me wrong, other than our children and our people, water is our most precious resource. I don't think it's that close. I think children and our people are way out front. But I think water is right there, number two. And I'm all for it. I mean, I'm all for the 10 and 10 years thing, all that. But to just park money in a coffee can, that's not going to be really, that none of us really know what project. Maybe we'll find out here in a little bit. But I'd like to see that. So appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Majority Floor Leader Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. We're going to give this a whirl. I just contacted our department that handles our water, and they said the primary need right now is the Alkali Creek Reservoir. And it's in design and finishing, and it potentially will finish quicker than what they anticipate. So he said those funds will need to be in there to be able to finish that project. It's not on or in the construction bill. So that's what would be the need for keeping that. So 25 million is the number that we're getting to try to finish that project that will take place yet this year. So hopefully that answers some of those questions.
Anyone else for their first time? Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we heard from the last speaker of Alkali Creek Reservoir, and that comes from my county. And if we move ahead faster than projected, we need money in that account. And so money that's going to be taken and elsewhere. We had this discussion Friday, and we funded it at 30 as instead of 15. And so now trying to take all the money out of it, I don't understand that. But when we have had these projects on hold for as long as they've been, and when they're getting in the stages where they're ready to go into construction and design and all of these things, to be able to get there and not have the money there is just a detriment to our people. And I agree, water is precious. And when people are ready, and when it's going to be a benefit, when it's going to bring people's production up, I heard testimony before I left from our conservation district that this would bring them from 1 cutting of hay to 3 cuttings of hay. That goes a long way to our agriculture industry. And if we can help those people out by putting money in accounts that can boost their production land and help them as they strive to have their land and their hay and their crops be more fruitful and productive, then I think it's our responsibility to do that. We can leave the money and put it someplace else that can go for things we don't know, or we can know where our money's going in this account, and that is to help our people in our agriculture industry, which is one of the most important to this state. Thank you.
Representative Hornock for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I tried to bring an amendment during general file as we debated this bill, which would have put the oversight of this now $30 million back into the hands of this body and taken it out of SLIB. Now, once again, it's being taken out of SLIB. When I brought that amendment, I think I only heard 1 or 2 yays on that one. So just saying that. But there was a lot of debate about we need to use these funds right away. We need them accessible. The SLIB board needs to control them. So, I don't see the benefit, frankly, of this amendment necessarily. And if that's the way this body originally wanted to go. Thank you.
Representative Strong for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My one point is, we just voted for cloud seeding to get all this extra water, so I really think we better vote all this in to get all these reservoirs and dams and keep it going. Thank you.
Representative Larson for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had this conversation when we had this up at the end of our our committee of the whole hearing. The question debated is we've got these projects that if we don't have this money in here right now, we just won't have the money to do them. Can't grow peaches, can't grow dates and pomegranates that we're wanting to use this water for. And the argument was, is this the place to park this extra money that will generate 0.4% income a year? Or could we put it someplace else where it can grow maybe 3 or 4 times that and then fund these projects? The Alkali Creek Reservoir is the one that, so I contacted the good chairman or the good director of this division, as did the majority floor leader. In my correspondence back, he says, Alkali Creek's number 1, be coming back. We've got the money for it. It's there, ready to go. We can fund it. The next one, which I believe is Levitt, is they've got the updates, but it will not be coming for appropriation for a year. Not if something happens sooner. It's not if there's an accelerated. He says the track is the way it will come in is it'll be ready to be request funding for next year. So all we're saying is let's put this money where in your communities to help agriculture or municipalities, we could generate another $2 or $3 million just on the interest that this money being parked someplace else could bring. There's not an opposition to the bills, and I think that that's what this amendment is trying to do, and I support it.
Representative Stivar for your first time.
First for a second.
Chairman Eklund for your first time.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I don't disagree with the arguments. When I first brought the amendment to increase it from the 15 million to 30 million, I visited with our financial experts, and they assured me there were really no good places to park the money. And I think that this isn't the best count. It would generate 0.5% as opposed to maybe 1.5% in the other accounts. None of those are good options. If we had, I guess what I'd like to see, eventually we set up a place to park these monies that are going to be held for a little while, even a year, that'll make a reasonable amount of return on the investment. But we haven't done that, and I'm hoping maybe we can work on that. But for the time being, my real concern remains on what happens next year or the year afterwards or the year afterwards. I have been in these financial droughts time and time again. We come here, we've got plenty of money. We can, and it's a good thing. We can fund some things, get in a few good licks while you got the money. It's kind of how we do it in agriculture. And the legislature does the same thing. But we may be in such a drought that we'll be cutting water development and every other agency in the state. When that money's needed, this would put the money there so that we know we can finish Alkali Creek next year or whenever. I don't know when it's the final will be, but it should be within a year, I would think, or in about a year. Other projects funded out of this in reservoirs, we've got 2 or 3 that are still in the NEPA process. We have, besides Alkali Creek, we've got Levitt, we've got Middle Piney Dam, we've got Big Sandy expansion, and all of those have been, the question was asked, what's the next project? I think it's Alkali Creek, but it could be Levitt too, I'm not real sure. Anyway, those are projects we have. My argument then remains the same, that we may not have the money next year. And it makes me really nervous to be down to less than $7 million in that account when we've got a bunch of other smaller things that we do pretty constantly. And I would like to see it up at least enough to get past Alkali Creek.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I might be missing something here, but severance tax is the fund that we're using to fund water development. And the intent of it is to invest in renewable resources, i.e. water. And water belongs to the state of Wyoming, the people of Wyoming. What better spot to put this money than there? Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Chairman Zwanitzer.
First for a second. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else for their first time? Anyone for the second time on third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 93? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 30 million is a lot of money, right? And quite frankly, I've never really understood this water fiasco that we deal with, because we have a Water Development Commission and they report to, we have a department that oversees water and they report to Water Development Commission and they report to a select water committee of legislators, and it comes here. And it's been amazing to me that every project still goes all the way through, and I think it always has. I'm not sure we've ever, in my 18 years, we may have delayed one for a year here and there, but trust me, they always get done. Even in many of the places in Wyoming, our population is declining and we're still building more water projects, which is always difficult for me as a city that's growing to continue to invest our dollars in places where we have less and less irrigators. And I live in the middle of hayfields and I'm all for 3 cuttings a year, but I think there's 35 families or 35 irrigators on Alkali Creek. And I just heard from the Select Water chairman that we're not even sure what project is next. So if we're not sure what project is the next one on the list forthcoming and which one gets through the federal permitting quicker, I don't know why we're parking $30 million. That's enough to build an elementary school. That's enough to 50 state employees. I mean, there are lots of places for a direct check from the general fund to go for 30 million, but parking it at a low interest bearing account for something we're not sure we need yet has historically not been the purview of this body to do something like that. And it is great to have money for the first time in 6 years. I just don't think we should be parking it unless we know why we're parking and what the long-range plan is. And I'm a little bit shocked after a whole year of planning and going through these 3 development processes, we can't even determine what the next big thing for sure is going to be. So for this time, and because I know this has a long way to go through the whole process, I would ask you to vote yes on this amendment. We don't need to park the money in this bill.
Representative Davis for your second time.
Yes, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I'm against the amendment, for those who are not clear on that. But what better way to invest in the people of Wyoming? We talk about, what'd you say, 35 irrigators up there? Okay, them 35 irrigators, have you figured out how many times that water runs across this ground, down that creek, to the next guy, and on and on and on until it leaves the state of Wyoming? Water is so precious here that apparently we need to do without water, and then we'll discover how precious water is, you know. But anyway, thank you.
Chairman Eklund for your second time.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I don't have much more to add, but one of the speakers just explained why I think we should put it in the account. Yes, we build schools. We do all of these projects and we do them to the best of our ability. We've taken some huge hits to this water development program, and I'll get into it when we get into the next bill because it's not quite germane to the construction bill. The planning bill was one that there's a lot of money that has been parked in the account to be used for these projects, and I think before we spend it all on schools and come back next year and oil's in the tank and we've spent all the COVID funds, we ought to put some money aside. So I'm against this amendment. Vote no on it, please.
Anyone else for their second time? Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo my good colleague there, what he just said. There's lots of times we put money into things, we don't know where they go. Did the study work? Did the study not? This is a sure way we know it's going to benefit the people of Wyoming. And if we can increase production, if we have the ability to store water for our use so that it doesn't leave out of state, then we need to keep that valuable resource for our people so it betters our state and our people. And so I stand against this amendment. Thank you.
Anyone else for their second time? To the sponsor, Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and thank all the members for the information. So regardless of what, I'm still not clear what project, I heard two versions of that, but I just tell you, members, I think the last time that the Wyoming legislature, the members on this House floor actually raided the water account to do something else with it was in the late 90s. We have built every project, fully funded it, done a great job. We've done nothing but transfer in. So, and that was back, remember, when an inheritance of a lady balanced our budget back in the late 90s. So it just doesn't happen. We created Water 3 in 2005 because we had big ideas, right? We had this 10 in 10 years to build 10 dams and reservoirs in 10 years. 2005, think when that was. Right? It's Jonah gas, it's Western gas, it's the coal bed methane boom. Coal's starting to really take off. We had money and let's put this Water 3 account together and start building these big ideas. And so we've done that, right? And we've had our ups and downs of that thing. But I think it's important to look at the last page of your goldenrod. I think you've got a long-term profile. So Water 1 right now, after these two bills have been filed, both the Senate file and the House, Water 1's got 27 million sitting in it. Okay, and that's after the transfer to Water 2, and then Water 2's got 51 million sitting in it. So we've got 75 million already parked in Water 1 and Water 2 for the future, and then it's gonna get another 23 million this year in July with severance tax. Okay, so, and then when you look at the 6-year profile, it looks pretty good. You guys who have just been elected, you're pretty lucky. Us guys who've been there the last 6 years, it's been a fight. It's been a struggle. And so I just think, where's the right place for this money to go? And I just don't think to park 30 million, we just parked 20 million in a water emergency trust fund. So that 20 million plus this 75 million, we already got 100 million bucks parked in water. And we're gonna get another 23 million bucks in July and the July after that, because that's under the cap severance tax. It always happens. It's guaranteed. So I think to put 30 million out of the general fund of our tax dollars to put in a 1% or less account sitting there for a project that I don't think, I heard two versions of what the first project is. I don't think that's good policy. Let's save it. It'll flow at the end of the budget right into the LSRA. It's going to make a higher return. Our select water committee will do all this. They're going to come back and this is a project and here's 30 million or whatever the number is, and we'll fund it. There's nobody here not going to fund a water project to build a dam and a reservoir. We're going to do it. Should be doing more of them. But it's what coffee can you put the money in? And that's my point on this. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good debate. I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness, and it's all on the back page of your goldenrod, all those water accounts, and we just got a new one today. So take a look. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please vote aye on the amendment.
And would remind the body not to use individual company names in making remarks. Question having been called. Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 93. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The chair is in doubt. Would those in favor please stand? Okay. 18. Okay. My hearing is terrible. Yeah. Right. Those opposed, please stand. Okay. Yeah, more than 18. Okay, my apologies to the body. My hearing is not very good. Thank you. Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 93 has failed. We have a third amendment, Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I
Chairman
move
Eklund, proceed.
third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 93 and would ask for your favorable consideration. This is a technical cleanup and my computer is blank. So, all right. I was absorbed moments before this. So yeah, on page 1, line 10, after account, insert repealing obsolete provisions. And it's technical. Please vote aye.
Question having been called. All those in favor of House third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 93, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 93 has been adopted. House Bill 93, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call a roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom excused. Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith?
Aye.
Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwaniter Dan? Zwaniter Dave? Zwaniter Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Clouston? No to aye. Berger? Excuse to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 56 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 93, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 93 has passed the House. Representative Conrad,
Mr. Chairman, privilege of the floor.
please proceed, Representative.
Please hold your applause. Obviously, we make a number of decisions here, specifically at some point in time they reach our respective communities. I want to publicly thank and recognize the town of Mount View, specifically our mayor, Mara Ayers, council members Jamie Farron, and council member Tori Carter. Please stand up. Thank you.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Representative Smith. Good thing.
The Committee of the Whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 56. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 56, sponsored by Representative Brown, Purple Star Schools, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 56, Purple Star Schools, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stivar, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 56 do pass, and I will explain the bill, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start us off with a pretty quick bill here. No laughter. Apparently that wasn't as good as I was hoping. Ladies and gentlemen, this is actually a very simple bill, but what I want to do is explain to you the background of what this bill is. What I've been trying to do for the past 2 years was implement this without doing legislation. I'd like to have passed this particular program without actually putting it into the green books and creating more laws, but unfortunately we've had some issues with it and getting some of the rigor behind the statutory authority lined up. So what does this bill do? This is a completely voluntary program for our local school districts and local schools to become recognized as a Purple Star school. What's a Purple Star school? Well, Purple Star school is one that designates an individual in their staff to be basically a military liaison for any child that is being transferred into that school. This person is responsible for updating the website, being the main point of contact if the kid has any troubles at school, has troubles getting their classes arranged correctly, anything along those lines. They have a single point of contact that this particular school will have, that this individual these students can go to this individual and be taken care of. The other thing that this does is this allows the school district to designate these Purple Star schools without having to have a really burdensome process. This will all be handled at the Department of Ed, and then what you'll end up having with this is a program in which these students, when they transfer mainly to this community, but you will have some in your other communities as well, especially National Guard members or something like this, this program would be available to all of them. And so this is a very simple program that allows these students to have a smooth and easy transition into their communities and into their new schools. So going into the bill very quickly, and then I'll stand for any questions. If you take a look on page 2, the department shall designate a school as a Purple Star school if the school applies to do any of these. And the school has to have a staff member dedicated as a military liaison that can identify military-connected students enrolled at the school, serve as the main point of contact between the school and their families and guardians, assist in developing and coordinating appropriate services and programs relevant to the military-connected students, maintain the school website with easily identifiable information, assist with relocation and enrollment at registration and transferring records from an old school, academic planning, course sequences, and advanced classes available at the school, counseling and other professional services available to military-connected students, and then the name and contact of the information needs to be readily available to anybody who's interested in doing this. With the rest of the information here, the one thing that does have to have, or that can be offered, is professional development. And this was a question that came up during committee, is what kind of professional development would one of these liaisons need? And frankly, what it boils down to is there's a lot of good information through the Department of Education on how to deal with military-connected students and what kind of crises they face, about transferring every 2 to 4 years into new communities and how that would look. So these teachers could be trained by this liaison with professional development courses. And then lastly, what you would have is, in order to be recognized as a Purple Star school, they would have to do one of the following, and this is in the middle of page 4. They would have to have a resolution adopted by the Board of Trustees showing their support for military-connected families and students, provide recognition of the month to the military child or military family, or partner with a local military installation that provides opportunities for active duty military members to volunteer at the school. And Mr. Chairman, that is in essence the bill. Again, I would have much preferred to have put this in and ran this through the Department of Education without having to run this in the green books, but unfortunately after 2 years of working for it, sometimes they need a little nudge from this body, and I'll stand for questions.
All righty, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Brown's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation of House Bill 56 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. All right, it passes. House Bill 56 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for the consideration is House Bill number 20. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 20, sponsored by Agriculture, Land Exchanges, Priority, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 20, Land Exchanges, Priority, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Ullman, Allred, Banks, Crago, Davis, Slagle, Winter. Noes, Representatives Conrad, Eklund. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 20 do pass. There's a standing committee amendment. I will move that. I move standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 20, and I turn over the management of the bill to our Vice Chairman from the east side of the Bighorns.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you House Bill 20 and ask for your favorable consideration. So House Bill 20 is really an attempt at putting, we've talked about sideboards today and guidance for some of our governmental agencies, and that's exactly what this one is trying to do. In particular, if you look on page 2 of the bill, and this is probably the most important part of the bill, is notice. And we're going to ask that the department that manages our state lands provide notice to a certain group of people prior to these state land exchanges taking place. And so the list of people that are going to be provided notice is contained right there within the bill. If you look to page 3, this is another set of sideboards. And these are just some things that we're asking the department to look at when they are doing these exchanges and when they're making the decision regarding these exchanges. And just as a little bit of background, and it's not in the bill and you actually have to look in the statute, there has to be a specific finding of one of 4 factors. State lands has to make, the transfer proposed by state lands has to make state lands more manageable where the lands are not otherwise manageable, meet a specific need of a school or community for land, better meet the multiple use objectives for the benefit of the trust, or realize a clear long-term benefit to the trust which substantially exceeds the present and probable future benefit from continued ownership. So the department has to make one of those findings. After they make one of those findings, then we're asking them to consider this list of things that are within the bill 1 through 4, except one, which is actually, that's the standing committee amendment. So Romanet I, lines 15 through 17 on page 3 is really the main part of the standing committee amendment. There's one other part, and that is on page 2, line 11, in between the words including and notice, we inserted the word direct. The reason we did that is so that all those people on that list actually receive some sort of direct, most likely certified mail, but it'll be up to the director in the office to decide how they want to do that, rather than an online or a newspaper notice. This is actually going to be a written notice to all those people. So those are the 2 things that are actually contained within the standing committee amendment, and ask that this time I'd ask for a vote on the standing committee amendment unless there's questions. You should.
Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you give us any insight as to why the consideration for land exchange within the same county was taken out in this amendment? Thank you.
Representative Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we determined within the committee was the original purpose way back when was to try to create language so that the transfer was tax neutral within counties. But we heard, and that was what this language attempted to do. I'm not sure it actually did that, but that was the attempt. But what we heard within committee, and we had lots of testimony, is that is not necessarily what's best for the state and its citizens, because there oftentimes these transfers might involve fee parcels, private land in various counties, using those transfers to create one large piece of state land in one county. And so it's going to be hard if we're trying to obtain some of these goals that the Part A of the statute requires to necessarily require our office that manages our state lands to keep all of those lands within one county. And that was the testimony we not only heard from the deputy director, but from other constituents around the state.
So you have heard the motion on the standing committee amendment number 1. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, and question having been called, those in favor of standing committee amendments number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The standing committee amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly agree with the intent of this bill and what we're trying to do here, but I did have a couple of concerns. I'm a little worried that it doesn't have the real teeth here. Some of you know that these exchanges are near and dear to me, but my first question is this. Right there on page 2, it talks about after the director provides notice, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that's good. Notices are important, but it doesn't specify a specific time in the exchange process. Best I can tell, and if I'm wrong, please do correct me, that notice would go out ordinarily when the public notices are, or when the public is made aware of these exchanges anyway, which is about 3/4 of the way through the process. And the other question I had was in regards to on page 3, on line 13, where it says, accomplish as many of the following as possible. And again, the way I interpret that is saying, well, do as many as you can, If you get none, that's fine too. If you get all, that's great. So that's where my concern is regarding the teeth in the bill. And so if we could address some of those questions, that would be great. Thank you.
Representative Zawanaser?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I have similar concerns and issues. And I think this is a piece of legislation that has really noble intents, but I think there's a whole lot of concerns with it. So some questions for the manager of the bill. And let's just start on page 2. I think public notice is good. Just some questions, and maybe even having the county commissioners get to weigh in on state land exchanges. I can be almost agreeable to, but having state legislators from the affected county, I guess some conversation on why we would ask those local legislators, especially in a county where multiple legislators are in, does that not turn the process very political, especially if there are parts of that land exchange in various legislators' districts, and then it brings that kind of fight into the legislature, which historically has been the purview of the state land board. And it's the purview of the state land board because they have a constitutional obligation, when we move to page 3, to get the highest value for the trust beneficiaries, which are our children. But now we're saying, well, yeah, we are agreeing that that's true on line 12, but we're saying if these are contested or there's possible, different exchanges, and you get to decide between them, all of a sudden we're not using, the benefit for the best benefit for our children. We're putting these other qualifiers in there. And so the good country lawyer can tell me if he has any fear that there would be some litigation, because it's really easy to do a quantifiable economic study of what the highest and best yield on revenue rates is, right? That's pretty solid, right? You have economic experts and they say, here's the value and here's the best benefit for the beneficiaries. When you add these other things in, don't you get a whole list of things that you could litigate on, right? You're asking, now you're saying, well, this has 80% adjoining to state lands to state lands, and these considerations are all now in play, and they're somewhat, in my mind, at least subjective compared to what a bona fide economic decision is. So those are my concerns. I think the bill has a lot of great intent, but I really worry that, and maybe one more question, did anybody, LSO write any memos on the constitutionality? Because as far as I'm concerned, the Constitution says we do the highest and best benefit for our beneficiaries. Everything else comes second tier. This starts to muddy that other considerations are at play, and I worry that we have a constitutional issue there if that was discussed at all.
Representative Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to answer the good chairman's question regarding constitutionality first, and I also think this probably goes back to the good vice chairman from House District 51. I think it goes back to his question as well. If you look at the language on page 3, first and foremost, we have to inure the benefit for the trust beneficiaries. That's the number one thing we have to look at. All these other things are secondary. They cannot rise above our constitutional duty, period, end of story. These are, and that's why the language is also, really, it's sort of a may, it's not a shall, because if we put a shall in there, then we start running into constitutional problems and elevating these other considerations over the trust beneficiaries, which we can't do. And I think that's why the language is crafted exactly as it is. As far as why legislators are getting notice, I wasn't actually part of the interim committee, and so I did not hear testimony on that, and I apologize. I'll try to find an answer for that, and maybe the good chairman would have that since he was there through the interim. I think that answers the questions. If not, let me know.
Representative Eklund.
Mr. Chairman, so in answer to that, when the design of the bill is to try to make this process more transparent, land exchanges are already happening. The present process used by state lands is much different than the one we're proposing here. The reason state legislators and others were brought in is they're the local governing people that are probably closest to the people and can act as intermediaries and maybe keep this process as transparent as possible. And I think that's why they were there, put in there.
Representative Stiff?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I've got a slightly different question on the constitutionality, and it relates to on page 4, where we've not only given notice to the local state legislators, but we've actually given them a role in deciding what to do. And it seems, my question is it appropriate, is it constitutional for a subset of the legislature to then be essentially involved in the executive function of making a state decision?
Representative Craigo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe the good Speaker Pro Tem could direct me to exactly which provision he's wanting me to address.
Representative Stiff?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's if I'm not mistaken, it's the top of page 4. When in listing the priorities, it gives preference to those exchanges where there's been expressed support from a laundry list of people, and in that list includes state legislators. So it's not just a notice provision, it's rather saying, if a state legislator locally says, I want this, then the government's supposed to do it, or consider that as a factor at least.
Representative Western?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of following up on the previous remarks that are made, I appreciate the concerns about constitutionality, but as I read the bill, it's entirely constitutional that this doesn't nullify, abrogate, or abridge the obligation of the Board of Land Commissioners and their responsibility on behalf of the beneficiaries, precisely because of the language on page 3. Again, it says they shall consider implementing land value for value exchanges that inure benefit to the trust beneficiaries. Boom, we're constitutional right there. It's the language afterwards that kind of has me concerns, because the way I read it, it just says, hey, try to accomplish this stuff if you can. If you don't, that's fine too. Which again leads me to the conclusion that there really isn't a lot of teeth in the bill. And at this point, I'm worried that it might be a little redundant and just kind of adding additional verbiage where I think what we have in statute wholly binds the Board of Land Commissioners to act in the best interest on behalf of the beneficiaries. So that's my concern with the language in the bill. Thank you.
Representative Craigo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the Speaker Pro Tem brings up a good point, actually. Again, I wasn't part of the interim process. I think that's something we can fix with an easy amendment. And I think that would also, go back to the good chairman's discussion on the notice. Why are state legislators getting notice? Not sure we necessarily need direct notice. We will most likely get notice from our local county officials at that point in time. They'll ask us to get involved if they want and not if they want. But I think we probably do run into a separation of powers argument at that point, and I think it's something we should look at when we move on to second reading.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Eklund's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 20 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. It does. The House Bill 20 does pass the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 104. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 104, sponsored by Representative Haroldson, Hunting of Predatory Animals, Amendments, an act relating to game and fish. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 104, Hunting of Predatory Animals, Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Byron, Larson, Singh, Western, Winter. Noes, Representatives Burkhart, Storer. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Western, Vice Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Western?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion the Committee of the Whole rise to report it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 104 do pass. There are standing committee amendments. I'm actually going to turn the explanation of the bill and the amendments over to the good gentleman from just north of the capital city.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you guys today, we have House Bill 104. Let me explain a little bit of where this started. I had a constituent come to me and they said, you know, we had an issue with a snowstorm, a Charolais cow, and a predator hunter at night on public land. And I said, interesting. And I was, at this point, this individual said, I didn't think it was legal to hunt predators on public land at night. And under our current statute, it is. You can legally hunt predators on public land at night as long as you don't use any technology that would aid with being able to actually see anything at night. And so this is the conversation that came out of that. We have in my opinion, a safety issue where we have the possibility of hunters at night on public land without the technology that is currently available for us to be able to harvest these predators safely and effectively. And so this bill would lay out the opportunity to use night vision, infrared, and thermals or spotlights on predators on public land. And so we, if you go through it, we just have that opportunity there where it says on page 3, line 1, lighting devices including thermal or infrared imaging or other lighting imaging specified by rules of the commission. And then it goes down through, and it gives, at the end, we gave the opportunity for game and fish, the entity that manages our wildlife shall promulgate rules necessary. And so that's the gist of the bill, to give you a little history, and then I'll move the amendment. 34 other states currently have this legal in their states as we're looking at going. Of those 34, there was a Pennsylvania Game Commission that polled those 34 states saying, hey, did this create a runaway with poaching? Because obviously we don't want to open that door if that's an issue. Of the 34 states that were addressed, 19 came back and said there was no noticeable increase or change in illegal taking of wildlife. I'll play the devil's advocate because that was one of the concerns that was brought forth, was would this open up the poaching world? The reality is this technology is available right now. And bad actors or bad characters could at any moment or any time be out on public lands using these weapons in inappropriate ways. And so if we were to pass this, it would open up the opportunity for a lot of law-abiding citizens to be out on these properties. And it would, I believe, in a lot of ways would help police itself. Because right now in the state of Wyoming, a majority of the poaching cases are not caught by game and fish. They're turned in by sportsmen and landowners that are saying, wait a second, what's going on? And so we are going to, I believe, have an opportunity to even affect and help that. So also this year, and we heard about it in the State of the State by our the leader of our executive branch, that $2.25 million is going into predator control. There's a gentleman in my community, an older gentleman in my community, who was going to lose his hunting funding from his wife, and he ended up shooting 196 coyotes that year to pay his way to Africa and New Zealand. And so the answer, the question was, can they actually make a dent on our predators? The answer is, I believe if one gentleman in his late 70s could do that, I believe, yes, we could definitely make a dent on our predator population. So there's the bill, and now for that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 104 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you.
1 second, we're gonna discuss the amendment now. So the amendment was placed on there by committee as well as a recommendation from the entity that does talk about our fish and wildlife, and they just wanted some clarification on what the that organization or that entity, that government entity, could do in the realm of regulation. Because obviously what we don't want to do is create a free-for-all that could hurt are big game hunting or trophy game hunting. And so this would give them the freedom, the full freedom to promulgate rules, seasons, anything of that nature that they feel is necessary through the commission to protect that. So there's that and one other aspect, and I would just, any questions on the amendment?
Thank you. Chairman Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I apologize, and I apologize to the good gentleman from County Number 8. As a chairman, I want to go ahead and move standing committee amendment number 1, so my apologies. And I encourage an aye vote on the amendment. I think it's a reasonable sideboards. It got thoroughly discussed in committee, so I encourage the adoption. Thank you.
Is there, Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to divide the amendment. And I'd like to divide it on the amendment, lines 1 through 5 being the first division, and line 6 to the end being the second division. And I'd like to take the first division.
The chairman will stay at ease until we figure out if it's divisible. Okay, could you give us the split one more time, please, Representative Hornock?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. So lines 1 through 5 being the first division, and line 6 through the rest of that amendment being the second division.
Page 3, line 2, so you just go in here.
The next division 2 starts.
All righty, we find that it is divisible. Which one would you like to start with first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with number 1, the first division, lines 1 through 5 of the amendment. So the reason why I want to separate these two is in this particular section of the amendment, we are kind of boxing in our department that promulgates rules for hunting. We're kind of boxing them in on the date that they are allowed to do things. The department themselves, we will give them in the second division, we will give them the ability to set the dates, make the rules, figure out how they want to do this. But in the first division, I'd like to ask for your no vote on this part of the amendment on Division 1, because it kind of boxes in our, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say what department, but the department that does control hunting in Wyoming. So you're limiting the date that they're allowed to do something when the second division allows them to set that on their own. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on Division 1? All righty, Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Body, this amendment, what this does by these dates is eliminate the use of these devices during big game season. And that was an implication by the department. That was one of the things they felt they would like to have available to them. There was no objection to this during the committee by any of the people who testified or anything. So that's what it is. The dates are August 1st through January 31st of the following year, and that's archery season through the end of cow-calf seasons for elk. So that's the reason for it, is to not have these devices being used during our big game seasons.
All righty, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at it, I do believe we need to be careful because I don't want to hamstring our entity that deals with fish and wildlife. We already in the second amendment, it does say that they'll have the ability to create zones, areas, and valid dates. And so we would be giving them the ability to build valid dates, but then at the same time remove their ability to do those valid dates through a period of time. So I believe that the voting down of one would actually do what this entity has originally asked us for, instead of putting them in a box.
Okay, Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm on and against the first division for the second division. With that, with boxing in our department that handles hunting from August 31st till January 31st, though not all, that's not that time frame. Those change with the different open seasons. So we should allow that department to decide what dates and what seasons are open. We definitely do not want to hinder trophy hunting or big game hunting, but I think they would know best. Some of those areas are not open for hunting during those times, and we should allow predator control. So thank you very much.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I just want to understand from somebody in the committee, once again, did this amendment come from that department? Is that where this came from? That's my question. And if it is, then I would assume that they were interested in retaining both Division 1 and Division 2. So somebody from the committee, please tell me, was this amendment brought by the department? And if not, explain a little more clearly, if it wasn't brought by the department, what the reasons for and why it was brought. So just a little more information from the committee, please.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question from the good speaker, and I'd be happy to do some elaboration. It was more of just a series of events in sequence. We were discussing the bill, potential amendments. The gentleman from the good land of Carbon made the amendment to put that specific date, the August 1st through January 31st. And then a subsequent amendment that was brought to ours. There was certainly encouraged by the agency that kind of gave them some sideboards. And to give it maybe a concrete example, for example, when antelope are fawning in the springtime, a baby antelope is, I think we've all seen them, right? And they can, for those first couple weeks of life, they can really look like a juvenile coyote. And so the idea was, let's say if there's an area that they like to fawn in, that it gives Game and Fish the sideboards needed to say, hey, just for these couple of weeks in May, we're just not going to allow any of this predatory hunting on public lands. After, say, I don't know, May 15th, you can resume, but just for that period to give them that ability in those isolated and specific cases, so that they can't have a regulation just to kind of keep an even keel. So that's the context, and I hope that answers some of the questions. Thank you.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please keep in mind that in order to establish rules and regulations that this department deals with concerning hunting, this department goes out throughout the state and they talk to people throughout the state. They hold, I don't know what they're called, town halls or something. They hold them in various places throughout the state. There's public comment period. So there's a lot of information that they gain from everybody throughout the state who is concerned with this matter. They will bring them in, they'll talk to them, and they'll use that to develop the rules that they're going to set, and probably the time period that they will allow for this type of hunting. So please keep that in mind. I just don't think that it's a good thing for us to box them in. I'd like to give them that ability to talk to the citizens throughout the state and figure that out with a lot of buy-in. Anyway, please vote no on Division 1. Thank you.
Representative Angelos.
Again, on and against the first division. For the second division, to answer the good speaker's question, the agency brought the second division amendment first. Our committee member from district number 15 brought the first one secondly. So if that clears that up. Thank you.
Okay, questions having been called, all those in favor of standing committee division number 1, say aye. Opposed? No. All right, the standing committee amendment number 1 has failed. We are back on division number 2. Any discussion on division 2? Okay, question having been called, all those in favor of standing, just kidding. All right. Representative Davis.
Mr. Chair, I just would like to have a little clarification here. Does this affect the normal season of predator hunting from dusk till daylight? Or is this just for the night vision?
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I got this really nice note real quick, if I could have a slight privilege. Your voice is awesome, however, you'd be more effective if you moved a little further back from the mic. So I'm sorry. I got my preaching voice on and I'll blow you away. This does not at all affect daytime hunting in any way, shape, or form. This would not affect at all nighttime hunting on private land. It only would affect nighttime hunting on public land. And this is just to give them, I mean, because let's face it, if it's October 14th, the day before opening of elk, and everyone decided to go out and shoot coyotes, we could have a problem. And so it just is a situation, it gives them the latitude for some sideboards.
Okay, question having been called moments ago, all those in favor of standing committee division number 2, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No? The standing committee amendment number 2 has been adopted. We are now on committee of the whole, actually the bill, right? Oh. Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm under the understanding that we had some concerns expressed during public testimony from our agency that manages our awesome wildlife, and I'm wondering if the committee can shed any insight into those concerns and if they were accommodated in this bill. Thank you.
Representative Baer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind everybody that Article 17 of our Constitution addresses our state militia. And that state militia is supposed to be able-bodied and qualified. I think it's important that we have the ability to do this, to train ourselves to be a great state militia. On and for the bill.
Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the spotlight portion of the nighttime hunting, was there any concern from any neighboring landowners that the spotlight might affect the neighboring landowners and their ability to, sleep at night?
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the speaker just a few seconds ago. Let's protect ourselves from the uprising of the squirrels. Vote aye.
No further discussion. Are you ready for the question? Or Representative Harrelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to answer the question from a couple speakers back, so the poaching aspect was the one thing that Game and Fish was kind of their overarching. They were concerned about the potential that we could see an increase in poaching. And I go back to that statement by Pennsylvania Game Commission that did a 34-state poll with 19 replying back saying that they didn't see any rise. That doesn't mean that you couldn't. Obviously, we don't have we don't have the ability to see into the future on that, but that is what they commented on. And really, the only other thing was, what is the clarity of these devices? That was a question that was brought by other individuals, and I can send an email out if people want to actually see what this looks like, the actual vision through these optics, as long as you guys are okay with watching coyotes no longer be alive at the end of them. I mean, that's just the honest truth. So anyways, that was kind of where they came from, and we have another committee member stepping up, so I'm sure she could probably answer some more.
Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Serving on the Chair WCR committee, we did hear concern from the department that manages our wildlife about the ability, as our representative sponsor said, concerning poaching of our big game animals and their ability to contain that, especially if they are unable to afford $10,000 thermal night vision devices as well, and that they are short of staff currently. So that is the biggest concern I think we did hear. We also heard from representatives from the wildlife community and sporting community that this bill and these actions are not really about fair chase. They are about just shooting predators. It's not something that I considered something of a sporting nature, and that's why I voted against the bill. But that was kind of the majority discussion that we had. Thank you.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want everybody to know that I have seen thermal imaging cameras that are the size of what goes on your cell phone camera. They get that small and they're very clear. And here's what's going to happen with the poaching. This is just a prediction. I'll throw this out there. Poachers aren't always the sharpest tool in the shed. They're going to have these thermal imaging camera cell phones. They're going to stick that on their scope. They're going to record what they do, and that's going to become something they can be prosecuted with in the end for poaching. Just, you know, it'll probably happen that way at some point. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Western's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 104 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 104 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our...
Privilege, Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Representative Jennings.
I thought this might be a good time for us to all take a break. Up in the South Gallery, a very good friend of mine that some of you will remember, Roy Edwards' son, is there. Mitch Edwards, would you stand?
The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 106. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 106, sponsored by Representative Slagle. Eminent domain, wind energy collector systems, an act relating to eminent domain. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 106, eminent domain, wind energy collector systems, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allemand, Allred, Banks, Crago, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Noes, Representatives Conrad, Davis. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill, which is it? 106 do pass. I'll turn the explanation over to the bill sponsor.
Representative Slagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that was constituent-driven. The constituents of my district have expressed concerns over a wind-generating firm that was going to use it to power a hydrogen plant. And they have a project proposed in our district. And to this date, the firm has only approached the state lands for getting places leased to put their windmills. And the only way the private landowners have become aware of that is they received a consent form from the state lands to consent to having another co-leaser on the state lands they already have leased. And the interesting part is that none of the private landowners have been approached by the wind firm about leasing their property for putting up windmills. And so the concern is, and one of the landowners had received a letter from the firm actually stating their intent to build a multi-thousand acre wind farm. And so the concern is with them only proposing to build these wind chargers on state lands, there's going to be distribution lines running across private lands. And I don't know how many of you are real familiar with the state lands in Wyoming. They're mostly 16 and 36 sections out of the township. So that's a long distance between those sections of state lands that we're going to have distribution lines on. So the concern was with this firm only going to the state lands to lease property and not talking to private landowners, that they would not be willing to pay the prices to actually lease the land to put up a distribution lines. And so that was why the bill came about. So with that, and basically what we did is we took language from the statute that is already currently there, and we just, it had a date that expired in June of 2015, and we moved the date out to 2032. And that's the only language we've actually changed in the statute. So I would stand for questions at this time.
Representative Zwanitzer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was hoping for a little more explanation besides there's a problem in one county, and so we're putting a 10-year moratorium across the entire state of Wyoming when it comes to wind development. For those of us who lived through this bill, because it didn't happen just in 2015, we actually extended it, I think, 3 times during the wind task force and when we looked at all of these issues, and it finally expired in 2015 when we realized what we set out to do didn't work. It just seems a little shocking that 7 years later, we're bringing it back out of nowhere and making it a 10-year moratorium because of an issue in Wyoming that doesn't actually have a lot of wind up there. And does that not concern anyone else besides me in the room?
Representative Stitt.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I guess my question, I am interested in the history of why we had this prohibition that expired in 2015. So I have 2 questions. One is, why was that prohibition put in place and what was the effect of it lapsing? And my second question relates to just the effect of this bill. If adopted, it looks like private wind developers would be prohibited from really building a wind farm, period. It would just put a moratorium on private wind farms, at least doing it by condemnation, at least, for their transmission lines. But public utilities would still be able to. So if a public utility wanted to erect a wind farm, or if a public utility wanted to condemn the property for a transmission line, they would still be able to, just the private developer would not be able to. Is that what this bill does? I mean, it looks like it creates sort of the exclusive power in the utility for transmission line condemnation and removes it from the private wind energy developer. Is that what the bill does? Thank you.
Representative Larson.
Thank you. And after conferring with one of the other legislators that was in this body at that time to answer the previous question, that moratorium was put on at the time we had several wind generation projects, prospective wind generation projects, and the thought was to try and establish some corridors that multiple wind energies could use, similar to what we've done with that natural gas corridor right away through the state. And so the intent was to put this aside a little bit, see if they could establish some corridors and then bring it back in. But that was the intent behind doing that. Mr. Chairman, my question is similar to the first question was asked, is this a problem on wind across the state because we've had significant development across the state, or is this trying to adjust one unique problem and pull it out of the condemnation statutes? What's interesting, and again, whenever we talk about condemnation on private property, it's a pretty tender subject, and there's a reason for it and there's a reason not to like it. So I think the interesting thing is that we have the ability to do condemnation for a wide variety of projects across wastewater ditches, underground water pipelines, railroad tracks, sidings, the list goes on, but yet we're just plucking this one thing out and saying you can't use this. And that seems a little wonky on the way we approach that, but I'm trying to understand better why we would just pull that one out if we're just trying to fix one little problem in one little part of the state. I need to understand that.
Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I guess my question is, did wind ever have condemnation rights? I'm a landowner. Frankly, I don't think anybody should have condemnation rights across my property, period. So, and there's a lot, and that exists for the public benefit. That doesn't mean I like it, and that doesn't mean I support it. But I'm assuming that this has been all along with wind collector systems, that they did not have condemnation rights. So if I'm mistaken on that, somebody can correct me. If we're reinserting a law that has been off the books, that's fine. But if we're just giving up one more property right to an entity, then I want to know that too, because I don't support it.
Representative Slagle.
Yeah, to answer the questions, I think the one question it's asking is this to just solve a problem in one area? And in a way it is, but in the long, big picture it isn't. And the thing is condemnation takes away private property rights. And that's the big picture we're looking at here. And it takes away a private landowner's ability to really be able to negotiate a fair deal. Because when you come up, people have the right of eminent domain come in and can condemn your property. You know that at some point they're going to say, I'm going to condemn it. It doesn't matter what you say you'll agree to. They can condemn it. And so that's where we're coming from. And this applies all over the state, like our good speaker said earlier. He doesn't want people to take his private property rights away. And as far as the big concern from the people in my district specifically here is this whole issue of they're only proposing, right now, the only people that have been contacted to lease their property for wind generators is the state lands department. No public people. And so if they put generators on state lands, then if they can condemn to come across any of the landowner's property next to them to put a distribution line, that's a problem for the landowners. I mean, because it's the windmill towers that they're putting up that'll most of the time bring in the most money for landowners. It isn't the distribution lines that they run for the most part. Anyway, any other questions I can answer?
Representative Zawanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I was in this body when wind was the answer to everything, right? It was the new renewable resource. And what was happening was landowner A was able to install windmills on their land, and then guess what? There was nowhere to go with the line. And so they went and condemned the landowner B's property, and landowner B did not get any benefit from that happening. So we, back, I don't remember the exact dates, but about 2014, 2015, we put moratoriums till we could figure this out. And as the fine Vice Chairman mentioned, we were trying to get corridors like the interstate system, because you don't want a road running everywhere. You wanted a couple of main roads and then the tributaries that go into them. So that was the origin of what happened. And the lawyers are back here trying to find out what the legality of it is now. But with putting this back in, I do believe it gives the landowners a little better chance to negotiate, because you can then, if they come in, rather than just condemning your land, they would have to pay you for it. And then property owner A and B both come out ahead. Thank you.
All righty, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Eklund's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 106 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. House Bill has passed the Committee of the Whole. Okay, division being called. A standing division vote is required. All those in favor, please stand. Okay, and all opposed? Less than 42. So House Bill 106 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 111. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 111, sponsored by Representative Oakley, endangering children, fentanyl, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 111, endangering children, fentanyl, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Bear, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Strzok, Zawanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman.
All right, you have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Harshman? But we'll go with Representative Oakley filling in.
Yeah, Vice Chairman, and it is the reason I'll be moving the bill. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 111 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment, which I will discuss at the appropriate time.
Okay, Chairman Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, body, I bring to you House Bill 111 and ask for your favorable consideration. It's a simple bill, but I think it's an important one. What this bill does is adds the drug fentanyl to a felony child endangering statute that's already in existence, 64405. And so if you're looking at the bill, of course, you can just see throughout the adds or fentanyl. What the bill currently does is prohibit having children in the room with methamphetamine or from absorbing, inhaling, ingesting, because we know the danger of methamphetamine. And so what this does is bring fentanyl. The reason, of course, behind it, we've just seen a huge surge in fentanyl in our state. And I mean, it's gone from something that we hardly saw at all to being extremely prevalent. And in addition, it's extremely dangerous. We're seeing increased overdoses, increased accidental overdoses, and the accidental overdose, because there's just such a huge lethality factor with fentanyl, including like accidental contact with it. Law enforcement isn't even touching it unless they're, gloved up. So obviously, it's important that we add this. We don't want this fentanyl where children can access it. So that's the bill. And then at this point, I've already moved, but I will go on to discuss the standing committee amendment. So what this is making sure, this came from our good doctors, that legal drugs are excluded. Actually, through this process, I learned that a handful of people, not many, but actually have a prescription to methamphetamine. So you learn something every day. So what we added, when page 2, line 1, before it starts the no person shall knowingly permit a child to, we added unless properly stored and pursuant to a valid prescription, comma. And we also added illicit, the word illicit, in front of methamphetamine and fentanyl. And again, what we're getting at there is just kind of two ways that we're saying clearly this is illegal drugs that we're prohibiting, not something that would be, if you had a terminal cancer patient and there was fentanyl in the house, that's not what this would apply to. And then finally, we changed it to be effective immediately rather than waiting for the 1st of July. So with that, I will, I guess, call for the question on the standing committee amendment, unless there's questions.
Representative Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on the amendment with regards to properly stored. Is that defined somewhere, or do we have a common understanding of what it means to properly store your prescription medication?
Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So no, that is not a defined term. So it would be the commonly used meaning of those words. I do think that also, since there's an and in there, it also would be, so it would have to be properly stored, and it would also have to be pursuant to this prescription. So I think that's covered there. Again, we're looking at, to this day, I've never seen somebody have, bring in their valid prescription when that's just not the cases that we're looking at.
All righty. Question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted.
No, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'm bringing a committee of the whole amendment, and I apologize about this, but I think it'll save us, it might save us some time and maybe another reading amendment. So just a little wordsmithing. So the doctors asked us for a few more words, so I'm adding 5 more words into what we just passed. So before we had, unless properly stored and pursuant to a valid prescription, the doctors asked us to add pursuant to a valid practitioner's medication order or valid prescription. So that's the amendment. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Okay, question having been called, all in favor of Standing Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, say aye. All opposed, no. The Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 has been adopted. Okay, we are back on the bill. Okay. Question having been called, all those in favor of Chairman Harshman's motion that the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 111 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. All righty, House Bill 111 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one modification to your order. We moved 144 down for a legislator. The next bill for your consideration will be House Bill 181, and then 79 and 74.
All righty, so the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 181. The reading clerk will read the bill. The next bill for your consideration is House Bill 181. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 181, sponsored by Appropriations, Online Sports Wagering Amendments, an act relating to gaming. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 181, Online Sports Wagering Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Representatives, aye. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
All righty, Representative Nicholas, or Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises when the Committee of the Whole rises and reports, it does through the recommendation that House Bill 181 do pass. I will turn the explanation over to the good representative from Casper. I will note for the body that your Appropriations Committee has on and off been the home of ETS and also for gaming, particularly at the direction of Management Council last year. So you're going to see a few other bills originate addressing gaming that come out of our committee. So thank you.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before us, members, is House Bill 181, and this is sponsored again by the Joint Appropriations Committee, and it's online sports wagering amendments. So a couple years ago, we approved online sports wagering, and at the time, we knew we were going to need to make some tweaks to the statute, and that's really what the bill before us does today. So if we start on page 2, in line 11 and 12, that's a new definition or a further refinement of the definition of what are how to calculate free wagers. And so we're calculating them based on the actual dollar value of that free wager. And that will come into play as we get later in the bill. And then as we move on down to the bottom of page 2 in subsection 15 there, this is the sports wagering vendors. These are the back of the house third-party folks that provide services. And we're just adding a few more of those people that are included in that list of the type of people doing the work in the back of the house for really for the Gaming Commission is who they're doing most of that work. If we move on to page 3, all of the underlined language starting on line 2 through line 17, this is all new definitions talking about critical components, records, and storing of those records and results, as well as then down on line 13, this is a definition of key personnel. And this definition of key personnel will come into play later in the bill. So again, just updating these statutes as we knew we would need to. If we move on to page 4, the language there is just conforming language. Move on to page 5. On page 5, in the middle of the page, subsection H, we're extending the time period the Gaming Commission has to approve these various licenses from 60 days to 90 days. And then later in line 17 and line 22, those are just conforming changes. On page 6, it's all conforming changes, just adding permit holder or license holder. Moving on to page 8 is actually where the next major action takes place. We have in line 2, subsection P, this is where we get into the key personnel of an applicant. And so these folks that are listed here are the same one, are the folks that will now need to be licensed, and there will be a $250 annual initial fee and renewal fee for these individuals as key personnel. And then in line 13, subsection Q, an employee of the applicant or the license holder. Again, these are a way to license these folks that are part of the business. And again, another $250 application for those folks that are involved in the business. And that's really industry standard. We just are learning more of this as we continue to go through the process. Moving on over to page 9, and this is really a big component of the bill, the bottom of page 9, moving on to all of page 10. And this is in regards to the negative carryover balance. So it was not something we never addressed legislatively. In rule, they were allowing the companies to carry over a negative balance. And yet in early drafts of this bill, when we were working on it, there was some language that discussed the ability to carry over a negative balance. And so really we just went with kind of what I would describe as an industry standard now in this bill. So it allows them to carry over a negative balance for 2 months. And then after that, they either will have to zero it out or it will zero itself out, I should say, or the 2 months will expire and they'll just have to wipe it off their books. And this is for a taxation purpose. This is not something that will affect the players participating in the activity. And really the main time this would occur is when a business first starts in the state of Wyoming, as they offer a significant amount of promotional play. And so as we talked early in the bill, the actual cash value of that promotional play causes them to not generate the actual dollars that they would need to meet their tax burden. So we clarify it again, this is really industry, an average of what I would call industry standard. And then we move on to page 11, line 3, that's more conforming language, line 15 and 16, more conforming language. And that is the bill. Again, this is just a really clean up and furthering the online sports wagering statutes we have to make sure they're functioning the best we possibly can make them function for both the state of Wyoming as well as the public. And the whole goal of having this a regulated industry is to bring the people out of the unregulated market into the regulated market for the consumer protection as well as just good governance in the state of Wyoming. So please vote aye on the bill and I'd answer any questions.
All righty, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 181 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. All righty, House Bill 181 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 79. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 79, sponsored by Representative Crago. Voter ID, concealed carry permit, an act relating to elections. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 79, voter ID, concealed carry permit. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Holloman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman.
All righty, you have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 79 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment that I would move as well. Standing committee amendment number 1, and I'll turn the explanation of the bill and amendment over to the bill sponsor.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, members. This really is a good little bill. We're not even kidding this time. This is actually brought to me, this bill was brought to me, the idea for this bill was brought to me by a constituent back home who came to me and complained and wondered why he could not use his concealed carry permit as a valid voter ID. And he actually tried and they told him no. And so this bill is just an attempt to fix that problem. For those of us that were here a couple years ago, we did an overhaul of the voter ID, the proper voter IDs that could be used. And this is just one apparently we missed. And it actually should have been used. It's one of the most secure forms of ID we have in the state of Wyoming. And so as far as the standing committee amendment, there was a little bit of concern about reciprocity and whether reference to our concealed carry permit statute, which is 68104, would create some problems for our county clerks. And so the language just is changed in the standing committee amendment. And what that does is change the wording to say a valid permit issued by the state of Wyoming to carry a concealed firearm, period. And so without further ado, I'd stand for any questions and ask for a vote on the standing committee amendment first.
Question having been called, all those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The standing committee amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there are no other questions, I would, oh, I see one coming.
Representative Provenza.
Committee, or body, vote aye.
All righty, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Eklund's motion that the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 79 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. House Bill 79 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 74. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 74, sponsored by Travel, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom was referred House Bill 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Storer, Western. Noes, Representative Singh, Winter. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Western, Vice Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
All righty. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Western, or Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so with a recommendation that House Bill 74 do pass. There are amendments. I'm going to go ahead and move the Standing Committee amendment, and I'm going to turn over explanation of the bill and the amendment to the representative from the Sharp Mountains in the northwest part of the state.
Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. We also have a standing committee amendment from the House Appropriations too. So we'll deal with that after we talk about the bill and the standing committee from Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife. So thank you. So this bill has been years really in the making, and I thought I would provide a very brief history of it and its evolution for those who aren't familiar with it. Its roots are in our former governor's 2017 task force on outdoor recreation, whose roots itself were an outgrowth of a 2015 task force on forests. So it's been at least 8 years almost in the incubation. The Outdoor Recreation Task Force was a citizen-led effort. There were 500 applicants to serve on that, 26 members. spent more than 15 days of hearings and discussion all across the state. In its final report, which is available on the State Parks and Cultural Resources website, I would encourage you to take a look at it. They determined that outdoor recreation is integral to Wyoming's historical, cultural, and economic identity. Obviously, this declaration reflects the many momentous events in our state's history, the designation of Yellowstone as the world's first national park in 1872, set apart as a public park or pleasuring ground for the benefit and enjoyment of the people, as it is still today. Similarly, Devil's Tower was designated as our country's first national monument in 1906. Obviously, our geography has been a source of inspiration for many efforts, both designations and expeditions. Those sharp mountains to the northeast or northwest, of course, have been world famous for their first ascents. But one of my favorite stories is the story of a couple of cowboys on July 4th in 1893 who decided that they would scale Devil's Tower. They had the good sense to construct a series of ladders of wooden pegs. They drove it into the cracks. Clearly, they had thought about how they could both get up and get down. That was something I failed to do some years later when a couple of boys from Gillette convinced me to climb the tower one Easter Sunday. And as a result, I found myself facing the very first rappel of my life from the top of the tower, 900 feet up. Let it be said that there were many lessons learned that day, some of which still provide me with the ability to stand up here and speak to all of you. So recreation can be life-changing experiences as well as an important part of our economy. Central to that idea is the National Outdoor Leadership School that still operates in Landers, started in 1965. It's one of the largest outdoor recreation employers that has helped to lure countless outdoor enthusiasts to Wyoming, many of whom have stayed, build businesses that enrich our communities and contribute to a thriving outdoor recreation economy. So just as the Oregon, Mormon, Pioneer, and California trails all crossed Wyoming in the 1800s, we now have the Transamerica cycling route, the Great Divide hiking trail and mountain biking trails, the Great American Rail Trail, all pass through Wyoming, offering a variety of outdoor recreation opportunities for locals and tourists alike. But there remains much to do to make the experience of those embarking on such expeditions a pleasurable one. And the opportunities for our local communities to find nearby outdoor recreation close to home is still very much a work in progress. The 2017 Task Force report noted that the incredible potential for industry growth and diversification, and of course, 6 years later, we know that they were correct. But building that necessary infrastructure to manage such growth has really lagged. Fortunately, the legislature saw fit last year to appropriate $14 million, 12 from ARPA funds and 2 from tourism funds for the State Parks and Cultural Resources Department to put out a grants program for applications. They received $70 million in requests from across the state, 5 times the funding that was available. So what do these look like? We have pathways for towns like Upton, Sheridan, Dayton, Orland, and Converse County. We have improvements for shooting sports facilities in Torrington and Rollins and Casper. Boating and fishing facilities in Lincoln County and Green River. These are for bathrooms and horse hitching rails, bike parks and playgrounds for our youth, archery and shooting ranges, and sometimes just a place to walk your dog is sometimes what communities really want. And recognize that each of these projects requires a capital stack. It requires a match. You need individuals and civic and nonprofit institutions, as well as federal programs, help create the funding for each of these projects, and they all require a match. There is a handout in your mailbox that provides an overview of some information on these projects, as well as the growing sector of outdoor recreation here in Wyoming. But let's get back on the bill. The fine members of the Travel, Wildlife, and Recreation and Cultural Resources Committee of the 66th Legislature made improving active transportation and other recreational infrastructure their highest priority over the last interim. And they were the sponsors of this bill. Originally, it was conceived with funding from sales and use tax. But our current committee, led by the good chairwoman from Park County, determined that funding for tourism dollars, which mostly come from lodging tax, was a simpler source of funding. So the standing committee amendment addresses that change. So to summarize, the bill creates an outdoor recreation trust fund, similar to the Wildlife and Natural Resources Trust Fund. This is a permanent fund and will be invested in the way we invest our permanent funds for the highest returns. The bill also creates an income fund where earnings from the permanent fund will be deposited and subject to legislative appropriation, I should say, spent. Those expenditures will be overseen by the 9-member State Parks and Cultural Resources Commission, an advisory board already established in statute and already existing. 80% of the expenditures will go to grants, 20% to administrative expenses. The bill, as amended, appropriates $6 million from the Tourism Reserve and Projects account, and courtesy of the House Appropriations Amendment, a matching $6 million from the general fund. So at the end of the day, this is just a modest way for the state to help communities invest in themselves as they see fit, to make their communities places that people want to visit and live, especially young people, and to diversify their economies. I believe it really is a great return on our investment to be investing in this way in our communities. So 3 things the Standing Committee does is change the funding from sales and use to the Tourism Reserve and Projects account for a total of $6 million. It prioritizes grants to areas where little or no tourism infrastructure currently exists, and it ensures consultation with Game and Fish for impacts to wildlife. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
So Representative Storer, would you like to move the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 74?
Yes, thank you. I would like to move the Standing Committee amendment from Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. All right, Representative Zawanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize to the body. I was going to divide it 6 ways, but I'm only going to divide it 3 because I know it's late. So, Mr. Chairman, the division number 1 would be lines 1 through 15. And then division number 2 would be lines 16 through 21. Again, division 1 would then be 22 and 23. We're going to make division 3 24 through 26, and then everything 27 and on would be division 1 again. So just to repeat that, division 2 is lines 16 through 21, division 3 is lines 24 through 26. If that's divisible.
All righty, and okay. All righty, the chair will stand at ease while we find out that if it is divisible. All righty, the chair finds that it is divisible. We're going to start with division number 2. Representative Swanitzer, which
Thank you,
division would you
Mr.
like to
Chairman.
start
So
with?
Division 2, again, ladies and gentlemen, is lines 16 through 21, or the wording on page 5, line 18, where apparently the committee added that the grants are provided to all counties based on their inverse proportional share of tourism income as determined by the Department of Tourism. And so 2 questions. I don't know what that means. It's being determined by the department. And so my first thought was lodging tax, but that's not a great way to determine the actual tourism income. And so just some questions on how we believe the tourism department will figure out what the proportional share of tourism income is in each county. That just seemed really odd to me. And second, it doesn't necessarily seem fair to me that maybe some of the places we most need these tourism recreation projects are places that aren't visited that much, that we're trying to encourage people to come bike and recreate in different parts of the state that aren't the same 3 counties we think of as, you know, the tourism counties in Wyoming. So I just had some real heartburn with this stanza. I don't understand how they would actually determine those numbers and why exactly we would hurt our smaller counties to not get, you know, what may be very worthwhile projects in their areas. So I'd ask you to vote no on Division 2.
Okay, Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, I also speak against Division 2 for the same reasons. It seems like it's designed to use the money in the least efficient way possible, that you would go out in the middle of the red desert and start putting, you know, trails where nobody is. So it doesn't make sense to me. It seems like doing it inversely proportional means that the county that has the least tourism dollars would get the most trails all the way on up the list, so that the county that has the most tourism dollars in the northwest corner of the state would get 0, presumably, I guess. So on and against Division 2.
Oh, Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I encourage us to vote Division 2 down. I certainly appreciate the intent of the language, but at the end of the day, this needs to be apportioned to where it is needed most. And I think that language in Division 2 might interfere with that. So please vote no on Division 2. Thank you.
Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment and the division. Ladies and gentlemen, do you really think your local communities get their share of money, this tourist money? And when we do these projects, all of us know where it goes. It goes to a couple counties in the state. Most counties are left out. If you look at the counties in the far west central portion of the state, they don't get much. It all goes to the northwest corner. And this was to see that those counties that have a need for tourism money get it. And whether they have tourism now or not, maybe they get it in the future. When you really look at it and think about where all of this money goes, it goes to literally 1 or 2 counties in the northeast corner of the state, 3 maybe. So the amendment is to see that it goes to the counties who don't get that much money. Maybe that's why they don't have tourism there at times. You know, and when you look at some of our small communities, they have some great facilities if you go and look. So it's just to say we need to spread this money out a little more equitably among our counties rather than giving it all to just a handful. On and for the amendment, the division.
Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think I wanted to clarify that the discussion we had is that there's actually, frankly, Teton County has built a lot of infrastructure on its own. And I do see this bill as particularly helping the rest of the state. We had discussion in committee. I do have trouble with the language in the Division 2 piece of the amendment myself, and I think there's probably a better way to get after that idea. Thank you. On and against the amendment.
All righty, question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Division Number 2, say aye. All opposed, no? Okay, the Standing Committee Amendment Number 2 has failed. Standing Committee Number 1, Division Number 2 has failed. We are back on Amendment 1, Division Number 3. Go ahead, Representative Zawanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be quick. Again, Division 3 is lines 24 through 26, where they're to consult with the Game and Fish Department prior to the application, which A, seems worrisome to me. Before they even submit the application, they have to consult. But it also seems weird to me, we're letting one of our state agencies have a little bit more of a, I hate to call it a veto authority or a gateway on whether or not these are approved. And there's no language for the Department of Agriculture, private landowners. And I understand wildlife is important, where some of these projects might go, and we want to make sure we're not disturbing migration corridors, sage-grouse habitat, whatever it might be. But I'm already kind of concerned in this language. Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources is involved. You have your Wyoming Tourism Department already involved on these grants, and adding one more layer of bureaucracy for another agency to have to be consulted just seems really onerous. And not that I think they would try to hold these grants up, but I do think it's just unfair that they have kind of a special position in how this process works, where some of our other agencies don't have that same wherewithal. So I thought it best is to delete that out of the Standing Committee Amendment, and I would hope the process would still work correctly. The projects that need to be, consulted and checked with, the board would probably ask the Game and Fish Department before moving forward, but putting in the legislative language to require it seems one step too far for me.
Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During discussion in committee, almost every group, agency that testified on this bill mentioned wildlife as one of the main reasons to support it. People come here to see the animals. Numerous ones that are into hiking, fishing, all of that said the same thing. People come here to see the animals. They didn't say too much. People come here to hike, people come here to bike. Can't come here to sand surf out in the dunes. They come to see the animals, and that was almost to the agent, well, not agency, but those testifying on the bill. This was put in again so that there are no conflicts between hiking paths, biking paths, four-wheeler trails, with winter range, with summer range, and with those things. And I think all the testimony that I recall hearing in committee is that the Game and Fish needed to be included in this as a check to make sure we don't disturb those great wildlife resources we have. So on and for the amendment, I think it comes with a lot of support from pretty much everyone who testified in committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just also point out that on page 8, line 12, consultation with other governmental agents, local, county, and municipal governments, others and nonprofit organizations does exist as part of the bill currently. So we did have a little bit of discussion about certainly the impacts of wildlife being of foremost concern. So I'm kind of neutral on whichever way you guys go on this. I think we've got it covered.
Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I encourage an aye vote on the amendment. Again, this was something that was, the folks testified in committee, the importance of this. I certainly agree that maybe the wording might be a little bit goofy. And I think we can tighten that up on a second reading amendment. But this was something I think a lot of these communities that were asking for this asked for this sideboard to be put on to ensure that migration corridors, et cetera, that those aren't being interfered or damaged with the implementation of these trail systems. So please vote aye.
Okay, question having been called, those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment 1, Division Number 3, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Okay, the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, Division 3 has been adopted. We are back on Amendment Number 1.
Further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no concerns. Well, I have no wish to fight Division 1, even though if I might have some concerns with it.
Thank you. Okay. Question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1, say aye. Opposed, no. The Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill, but it looks like there's
Yeah, the
two.
Standing Committee amendment from House Appropriations.
Okay.
Do we have anyone from Appropriations that wants to speak to that?
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move Standing Committee Amendment number 2 to House Bill 74 and turn the explanation of the bill to the good representative who's presented the bill from up in the land north.
Representative Storr.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Oh, he moved the amendment number 2.
Oh,
Nope.
No?
Mr. Chairman, I move the Standing Committee Amendment. It comes from
Standing
Committee number 2, and I apologize for sticking the good freshman in a corner, making her wonder what I'm doing when the rest of you are having the same question. I turn the explanation of the amendment over to the good representative from the center part of the state.
Okay, we'll go with Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this amendment does is it adds $6 million of general fund to go along with the money coming from the tourism department. So it just increases the amount for trails and recreation, and the good committee number 2 thought that was a wise use of our dollars, as it generates tourism dollars, plus it's a good livability factor as we try to maintain and keep our young folks in Wyoming and get others to move to Wyoming. So again, that's what the amendment does, is add $6 million general fund to this account.
Representative Haraldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on and against this amendment, when we had this conversation in TRW over the interim, one of the things that we had the conversation on is in 2020, lodging tax was a funding model that was given to our Office of Tourism. And out of that, this is a way to increase tourism. And we said, you know, this needs to be a conversation you guys have and figure out a way that we can fund this, that we can move it forward and actually fund it out of the area that it's going to bring revenue to. And so they did that, and I'm very proud of them. They did a great job of that, and it's a $6 million, basically, as it continues on year by year, they're going to put $6 million in out of that tourism board's funding. And this right here would, in my opinion, kind of be a step back. I understand why they want to do it. They want to help, but I think that this isn't the best use of that. And honestly, guys, let's vote this down so I can vote for this bill, because I really want to vote for this bill, but I can't if we put that $6 million appropriation in. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes, Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this amendment. I think this can really help jumpstart the fund and really increase some of the income used to support some of these trails. It was a generous token from the Appropriations Committee, and I think it can definitely help accelerate this fund and what it was designed to do. So please vote aye.
Representative Byron.
Thank you, Chairman. On and for this amendment, you know, I want to remind the body that we did have in previous discussions over $72 million in requests, $72 million in requests that were brought by your great county. So just think about that when you're going to consider this amendment, and I think the addition of the $6 million is warranted.
Any other discussion? Okay, question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 2, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The Standing Committee Amendment number 2 has failed. Okay, division being called, the standing division vote. All those in favor, please stand. Okay, those opposed, please stand. All righty, it has failed. It's 25 to 32. Roll call vote. The chief clerk, or sorry, oh, just the amendment. Okay, the amendment number 2 has failed. We are back to the bill. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 74 and ask for your favorable consideration. And members, this looks like a really long, complicated amendment, but it's really quite simple. It does 3 things within all of this language, and rather than read through it, I'll just tell you what those 3 things are. 1, it keeps us at the $6 million transfer over a biennium, but it says that we're going to do it quarterly, because the way it was drafted before, potentially the Department of Tourism could wait until the end of the biennium to ever make any transfer, so then the Recreation Fund wouldn't have any money until the end of the biennium. So this says we'll transfer the money quarterly to the account. It also says the unobligated, unexpended cash balance, and what that does is it says the tour or the recreation funds get the money first, and then tourism gets to go spend money on their ideas within the special projects account. And so it does those 2 things, and then it also says that if there's not enough funding, tourism doesn't get any, and just the recreation account gets as much as is available. So we're still doing all the same functions, but again, it just makes sure that they get the money on a quarterly basis so they have that steady flow instead of the potential of having it withheld. Who knows if that's what would really happen, but this way we make sure that it doesn't. So that's what this big, long amendment accomplishes. So please vote aye on the amendment.
Okay, question having been called. Oh, Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to delay this discussion, but this is important stuff, right? So it's only 2 taxes I voted for in however many long years I've been here. And the second was a lodging tax about 3 years ago. And as part of that compromise grand legislation, we created this account in the tourism, and part of the deal, shall we say, was that we weren't going to divert, invest, project where that money was going to go until a later time. So just so you know, that was a policy of the body previously. And here quickly, and I didn't hear all the testimony, but this is kind of a major policy change in general, even more so by this amendment, that we are going to take the extra money in this account, and we apparently in the Standing Committee amendment in this committee made a policy choice that we are going to biennially appropriate it every biennium. This is now the policy of the body, that the money that we agreed previously wasn't going to be diverted anywhere in particular until we got the revenues in and made future policy choices, has now been made for us in the Standing Committee amendment, which should be concerning, and we can talk about in a second. But now we're even further putting this policy, and if that's where the body wants to go, that's great. I just want you to know there's a lot more going on here. Now we're saying, actually, this outdoor recreation account grants are going to be first at the trough of anything that the tourism funds are going to be spent on, which is another very significant policy change from where we've been. So vote your conscience on it, but know that these are extremely significant issues we've dealt with previously on how we did the lodging tax, where this extra money was going to go, how we got that maneuvered through the process. And here quickly at 5 o'clock at night with 2 amendments, we're making what appears to be a very long-lasting policy decision for the entire legislature, which concerns me. So just know that all of that is in play as you decide on this amendment.
Representative Yin was, no, just kidding. Oh, Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the hour is late, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. I think the previous comments totally make sense if we did not know or unaware of how the agency in question felt about this. Luckily, there was a lot of consultation done with them, and they are fully supportive of the concept. They understand the importance that this type of concept has to tourism in our local communities. And I think that was a large driver of why they came out in support of it, and they certainly support this amendment as well. So just a little clarification for the body. Thank you.
Question having been called, all those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, say aye. Opposed, no? The Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has failed. We are back on the bill. Division being called. Those in favor, please stand. And those opposed, please stand. More than 23, so it has failed. We are back on the bill. Okay, Committee of the Whole, Amendment number 1 has failed. We are back on the bill. Okay, question being called. Those in favor of Vice Chairman Western's motion that the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 74 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, the House Bill 74 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Division being called, the standing, all those in favor, please stand. Of House Bill 74, please stand. All right, those opposed, please stand. Less than 40. So House Bill 74 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next person up to the microphone is Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the recommendation of Majority Floor Leader Nyman's. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All righty, it looks like we're moving on. So the motion carries. All those, okay, the motion carries.
The reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, Your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 56, do pass. House Bill 20, do pass amended. House Bill 104, do pass amended. House Bill 106, do pass. House Bill 111, do pass amended. House Bill 181, do pass. House Bill 79, do pass amended. House Bill 74, do pass amended. Representative Smith, Chairman.
Representative Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Smith. Messages from the Senate.
Message 176. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 23, Treatment Courts Transferred to Judicial Branch. Ayes 24, noes 7. Message 177. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 28, Livestock Infectious Disease Control, Tribal Inclusion. Ayes 29, noes 2. Message 178. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 41, Skill-Based Amusement Games, Authorized Locations. Ayes 29, noes 2. Message 179. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 65, Compensation of Local Registrars, Repeal. Ayes 31. Message 180. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 87, Natural Resource Funding, Large Project Threshold Increase. Ayes 24, noes 7. Message 181. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 96, Omnibus Water Bill Planning and Administration. Ayes 31. Message 182. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 100, Designation of Spouses, Revocation upon Divorce or Annulment. Ayes 24, noes 7. Message 183. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 102, Food Freedom Act Amendments. Ayes 30, noes 1. Message 184. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 106, 2023 Large Project Funding. Ayes 15, noes 16. Message 185. Mr. Speaker, upon reconsideration, the bill listed below passed the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 106, 2023 Large Project Funding. Ayes 21, noes 10. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Reports from standing committees.
House Bill 35, sponsored by Representative Heiner. Daycare certification requirement amendments, an act relating to child care facilities. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 35, daycare certification requirement amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Brown, Clauston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermuller. Noes, Representative Berger, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. House Bill 85, sponsored by Blockchain, for-profit public benefit corporations, an act relating to corporations. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 85, for-profit public benefit corporations, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harshman, Olson, Wiley, Yin. Noes, Representatives Harrelson, Knapp, Ottman. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 91, sponsored by Representative Zawanitzer Dan. News Source Shield Law, an act relating to civil and criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 91. News Source Shield Law, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver. Noes, Representative Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman. House Bill 113, sponsored by Representative Oakley. Judicial permissions to dismiss DUIs repeal, an act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 113, Judicial permission to dismiss DUIs repeal. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representative Jennings. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 124, sponsored by Representative Summers. Electricity generation taxation, an act relating to taxation. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 124. Electricity generation taxation. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Noes, Representative Sherwood. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 126, sponsored by Representative Crago. Trespass, removal of trespasser, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 126, trespass, removal of trespasser. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Chestick, Provenza. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 128, sponsored by Representative Clauston. Voyeurism within enclosed spaces, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 128, voyeurism within enclosed spaces. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 129, sponsored by Representative Stith. Wyoming Private Employees Retirement Savings Plan, an act relating to labor and employment. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 129, Wyoming Private Employees Retirement Savings Plan. Respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harshman, Olson, Wiley, Yin. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Knapp, Ottman. Representative Newsom, excused. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 133, sponsored by Representative Zawanitzer, Dan. Electrical installation by licensed electricians, an act relating to electrical safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 133, electrical installation by licensed electricians. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clauston, Hornuck, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Swanitzer. Noes, Representatives Ward and Yin. Representative Zawanitzer, Chairman. House Bill 145, sponsored by Representative Washit. Disclosure of sensitive information, law enforcement, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 145, disclosure of sensitive information, law enforcement. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Jennings. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 149, sponsored by Representative Zawanitzer Dan. Protection of Healthcare Workers, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred House Bill 149, Protection of Healthcare Workers, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clauston, Hornuck, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Swanitzer. Representative Swanitzer, Chairman. House Bill 159, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Department of Fire Protection and Electrical Safety Fees, an act relating to fire protection and electrical safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 159, Department of Fire Protection, Electrical Safety Fees. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 161, sponsored by Representative Jennings, loan disclosure for guarantors and cosigners, an act relating to banking. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred House Bill 161, loan disclosures for guarantors and cosigners. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman. House Bill 164 is sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer Dave. Legal notices, publication on websites, an act relating to the publication of legal notices. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 164. Legal notice, publication on websites. Respectfully report, same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yen. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 190, sponsored by Representative Harshman. Wyoming Value Added Energy and Industrial Plan, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 190, Wyoming Value Added Energy and Industrial Plan. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Burkhart, Conrad, Larson, Lawley, Western. Noes, Representatives Banks, Heiner, Knapp, Tarver. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Chairman Burkhart, I think we have a re-referral on that last bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to re-refer House Bill 190 to Committee Number 2, Appropriations.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 190 is re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. I think that clears the deck, doesn't it, Chief? All right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got your committee of the whole list for tomorrow. If you want to write these down. House Bill number 22, House Bill number 83, House Bill number 169, House Bill number 144, House Bill number 3030, House Bill 64, and House Bill number 66 will be the lead in on the committee of the whole. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until 10 a.m., January the 26th, 2023.
Committee announcements, Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet in the morning at 7 o'clock. And I'm not sure we received committee notices. The people that are presenting bills did, but we'll work through House Bill 116, then House Bill 88, then 95, then 130, and then we'll try to get to 114 if time permits, at least start it.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs will meet tomorrow upon noon recess
to hear hopefully 5 bills. That's pretty ambitious, but we're going to do our best. House Bill 68, school zone crosswalks. That's going to be continued from this past Tuesday. House Bill 158, bid rejection or denial for public works contracting. House Bill 160, driver's license veterans designation replacing DD Form 214. And if time permits, House Bill 156 and 154.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4 will hear 2 bills, actually 3 bills, 4 bills, maybe 5. It depends upon how good we get because we're dragging pretty hard. On Friday at noon, we're going to hear 176, finish it up. We're going to do work House Bill 137, House Bill 140, and House Bill 159.
Any other committee announcements? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations will continue hearing House Bill 89 and House Bill 182 at 9 a.m. tomorrow because we weren't able to get to them at lunch today, and re-referral of 190.
No other committee announcements. Representative Obermueller.
A privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There'll be a short House Republican caucus meeting down at the end of the Extension Hall in the conference room to elect officers. Thank you.
Representative Obermueller, are you sure it's not that and not the Supreme Court? Because I thought I got a note that was different than that. But can you find that out and then we'll come back at the end?
It is down at the end of the hall.
Okay.
In the extension in the conference room.
Okay.
I just got the
Gotcha.
look over.
All right. Vice Chairman Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. In the Capitol Extension Room 3, we will be considering House Bill 208, House Bill 209, House Bill 99, and House Bill 121.
All right, any more committee announcements? You have heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. The House is adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, January 26, 2023.